Okay, so I have received numerous requests over the last couple years showing how to remove one of these K91 transaxles from a 425, 445, or 455. I think before you remove it, you have to decide why you're going to remove it. Is it to replace a seal? Does it need to be removed? So on and so forth. There's a couple different ways you can do it. The technical manual probably lists a way. I'm going to do it a way, and you can probably find some other videos on YouTube that list the way to do it. What's important to note is how many places the transaxle is connected. So let's go through them. There are the two hydraulic lines up top. There is the input shaft over here at the tip of my finger. That is from the forward and reverse pedal. So that goes back and forth depending on the pedal. You also have the parking brake, or the brake itself, which when you depress the brake, this shaft right here moves. As this shaft moves, that rock shaft down there moves, pulling this lever forward. If you can see my finger down there, right there, that is where that the parking brake or the brake ends. You also have the differential lock. That is this bar right there at the tip of my finger. The differential lock comes to the back of the transaxle and terminates right here at that key. So actually what I can do is I can go ahead, well, probably need a set of pliers. That's actually one of the first things that I disconnect. So you have your two hydraulic lines, your forward reverse pedal, which is the same linkage, your brake, and your differential lock. Those are the attachment points that you have to separate first. Secondly, you have 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, holding the transaxle to the frame. Now you can do this a couple different ways. The transaxle is sandwiched in the frame by the rear hitch down there, and also this bar right here that holds the hydraulic release and also is a frame stiffener. Now there's a couple other things that can get in your way: the hydraulic cylinder, the rear hydraulic cylinder, so on and so forth. You can do it however you want to do it. How I do it is I leave the tires on. I support the front of the transaxle in some manner using a jack stand. I disconnect everything that I can. And then what I do is generally I will actually pick the frame up and walk the frame forward. I will take the hitch off and then I will pick the frame up and walk the frame forward, not taking off that stiffening brace right there. It doesn't flex quite as much, and it's a little bit less of a handful to do. So that is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to set up the camera and we're going to go to town. All right, so we're going to work on getting this transaxle out of this frame. So the first thing, and I may not have mentioned this in the previous section of the video, forgot about this electrical connection to the solenoid. Go ahead, pull that, so that way the solenoid is off. And then I'm going to go ahead and, like I showed you in the first part of the video, actually I'll go ahead and put the camera down there. Alright, so that spring pin right there is what we need to get out. I'm just going to use a pair of pliers. And that washer is also on there. It's going to fall out. Generally falls right out. And then you can just take and tap the bar itself up. And it'll come up, and that releases the diff lock. I want it to come the rest of the way out. Oh, it's in the way of the... There we go. So that's done. Now, what we're going to do is I'll actually pull you forward, and we'll do all the stuff on the front of the frame. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is take this bar out, and to do that, there is a little Carter or key in there, or whatever you want to call it, hairpin clip or whatever. I just am using a pair of long-handled pliers, and what I did is I actually came up from underneath the, I'll demonstrate. So I came up from underneath the machine, because the way that one's in, you can grab on either side and then pull down, and that will help straighten it out. And so, or you could also release it from back here if you choose, where my, you could do that. Sometimes that's easier, sometimes this is easier. Really depends on what you want to do. But now all of the mechanisms are free except for the forward reverse pedal. All right, so the next part that you need to take off is the forward reverse lever or rod, and that is done. You need a 13 millimeter socket on a ratchet, which will go through that hole in the frame right there, and then you need a 13 millimeter wrench that will attach on that bolt right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to set you up. I'm going to try to set the camera up right there to where you can see it. I think you can see it, maybe. Maybe not. This might be one of those ones you just have to watch me do it. Alright, so I've got the rod off. Next thing I need to do is take these two lines off, and then I can take the 4 bolts off and the hitch, and we should be able to just lift the frame up after I support the transaxle and push the frame forward and pull the transaxle backwards. So that's what we're going to do. I will set up the camera to take these hydraulic lines off, and then I'll just set up the camera just kind of at a distance to do the rest. All right. I can never remember exactly what size wrench these all take. I think it's a 20. 21. And then there we go. All right. One line. And 2 lines. Okay, now all I need to do is to pull the 4 bolts, and then we can support the front of the transaxle, and we should be good to go. I'm gonna get to work on that. All right, I've already removed the back hitch. Just for simplicity, it's just a couple of quick. In this case, somebody had gone in and replaced the regular flare nuts with, flare nuts with 3/4 inch hardware. So now I just like to take, and these are 18 millimeter. Had to turn up the power. I do have the front of this transaxle supported with a jack stand. These do have a pretty high torque value on them. Okay, the transaxle should now be free from the machine. Should be even key, unless I've forgotten something. Normally I forget 1 or 2 things at very minimum. So All the weight is on the front of the transaxle, so that means the transaxle should not want to tip backwards. You could put a jack stand into the rear if you so choose. But what we should be able to do is we should be able to just lift up. And you saw it settle down on the jack stand. I'm going to make sure all of my parts and pieces look okay. Yep. And then what we can do is walk this forward. And I'm just actually going to set it down on top of the case for just a second. And obviously, if you don't have the strength to pick the whole frame up and move it forward, other things that you can do include anything from having a friend help you. You could also you could just jack it up and drop the transaxle down. So you just have to jack the front part of the frame up, and then you could just wheel the transaxle backwards. Either one works. Also remember that there's no engine in this frame, which makes it a lot easier, but the principle is the same in terms of taking it out. How you actually get it out of the frame, there's about 3 million different ways to do it. You can either lift up the frame, you can drop down the axle, the transaxle. I know some people actually support the frame and then undo the bolts and the transaxle drops out, or they support it on like an ATV lift, and then the transaxle they can lower down on the ATV lift. So there's multiple different ways to do it. Don't necessarily think that this is the end-all be-all. The key thing is getting those connections out. Take your time, do it correctly. I mean, you see how long this is taking me. Aside from removing the back hitch plate, it hasn't taken me much time at all. I don't know the total time on the video, but you've seen most steps that I have done. So this is not a particularly hard thing to do. Just requires a little bit of forethought and a little bit of planning. The hard part for me is when I get the frame out and when I set it down on the ground, and I gotta be careful with my toes and stuff. Alright, so there's our transaxle, our K91 transaxle. Haven't decided what we're gonna do with that yet. Still has the tires on it, and then we have our frame. So I think we're gonna call this video a wrap. We'll look at how everything looks here. And I think we're going to call this video a wrap and call it good. Thanks for watching.